Hi everyone, my name is Martha Myers, and the topic that I chose to present is teens with mental illness, but more specifically, how low socioeconomic status affects their access to mental health care.
Where is the bus? I'm late. My mum's gonna kill me. It's really dark. I always feel like someone's watching me. I'm gonna fail my driving test. I'm dropping to pass now. I'm never gonna get this essays done by Monday. Am I going to get enough points in leaving? Why don't guys like me? They're just hanging out with me out of pity. I just want to talk to someone. I should be studying, but I can't. I'm going to fail the leaving cert. Will's gonna break up with me. Why can't they leave me alone? I can't face school tomorrow. My mum doesn't understand me. Are they separating for real this time? Should I move in with my mom or my dad? Is that going to get better? What am I going to do with my life? I need a job. They're going to kill me for failing that exam. I spent way too much time on Facebook. What should I do in college? Do I have any real friends? Why am I such a freak? Why is everyone mocking me? I look horrible. Will anyone go to my dad's with?
Hi everyone, my name is Martha Myers, and the topic that I chose to present is teens with mental illness, but more specifically, how low socioeconomic status affects their access to mental health care.
Where is the bus? I'm late. My mum's gonna kill me. It's really dark. I always feel like someone's watching me. I'm gonna fail my driving test. I'm dropping to pass now. I'm never gonna get this essays done by Monday. Am I going to get enough points in leaving? Why don't guys like me? They're just hanging out with me out of pity. I just want to talk to someone. I should be studying, but I can't. I'm going to fail the leaving cert. Will's gonna break up with me. Why can't they leave me alone? I can't face school tomorrow. My mum doesn't understand me. Are they separating for real this time? Should I move in with my mom or my dad? Is that going to get better? What am I going to do with my life? I need a job. They're going to kill me for failing that exam. I spent way too much time on Facebook. What should I do in college? Do I have any real friends? Why am I such a freak? Why is everyone mocking me? I look horrible. Will anyone go to my dad's with me? Why did I get drunk and make such a fool of myself? Everyone judges me. What's everyone going to think about me tomorrow? What's my mum going to say? I'm afraid to talk to my friends. My parents won't listen. There's no one to turn to. I'm afraid.
Are you okay?
Um, actually,
We all have problems. It's how we deal with them that makes us different. If negative thoughts are overwhelming you, you can always talk to a friend, a parent, a teacher, a guidance counsellor, or a healthcare professional. Control your problems. Control your life.
I originally started out researching teen suicide. I've worked in high school for 8 years, and I've known 3 teens who have actually taken their own lives, and their suicides impacted me greatly, as well as being a parent to teenagers and my own family experiences with some of my nieces and nephews. As a social worker, my desire is to work with the teenage population. I feel they're sometimes overlooked, And yet, if more is not done to provide services and treatment to them, not only is their future bleak, but generations to come will have many of the same challenges. During my research on teen suicide, there was so much information, and what I did learn is that teen suicide is actually on a decline over the past 4 years. And the declining rates are due to more preventative measures being put into place. But I also found a reoccurring theme that I felt needed more discussion, and that was that preventative measures were disproportionate in adolescents whose family are poor or otherwise have a low socioeconomic status. As we've learned, teenage development is a time of great change. Physically, their bodies are changing, hormones are fluctuating. Physiologically, especially in the neurodevelopment of their brains, there's many different changes going on. So as we've learned, I just wanted to recap with a short video about brain development.
Newsflash, teen brain not ready for adulthood. Before we really understood brain development, it was believed that teenagers had a fully developed brain, at least from a biological, neurological standpoint. But now we understand that brain maturation process, while quite significant during the teenage years, doesn't complete itself until about the age 25. There's been some interesting advances in brain imaging technology. 20, 30 years ago, CAT scans were about the only kind of picture you could take of a brain, and that could give you a rough idea if there was damage to the brain. Technology has moved to magnetic resonance imaging. So now it's as if we have a large, clear window so we can peer inside and see how the brain functions. The maturation process is complete the quickest at regions and centers at the back of the brain, whereas regions at the front of the brain are the last to finish this maturation process. What's at the back of the brain? It's called the cerebellum. Now that's the region of the brain that's important for physical activity, coordination, interest in recreational activities. This is one reason why teenagers tend to prefer a lot of activity. Other regions of the brain are undergoing significant development as we think about teenage behavior. The emotion center, called the amygdala. Parents are always frustrated by their teen who seems to overreact to situations. And that amygdala, which is highly sensitive during the teen years, is exerting its influence.
Hey, hold on just a second. Just chill out!
Because the nucleus accumbens is still undergoing some significant development, it reveals a tendency in teenagers to prefer high excitement, low effort activities. So interest by teenagers in video games, for example, would make a lot of sense. The front of the brain is where the prefrontal cortex resides. This is the region of the brain very important for reasoning, as well as controlling our behavior and controlling our urges and impulses. The cerebellum, the nucleus accumbens, and the amygdala, they tend to exert a greater influence on behavior than the reasoning part of the brain. It's a period of time where risk-taking is probably going to be at a higher base rate for that individual, where they aren't going to be thinking of the safety factor or the longer-term consequences as much as they might when they're in their mid-20s or older. The teen years is an extremely vulnerable period when an individual starts using and experimenting with drugs. They're at a much higher base rate to develop a dependence or addiction. Drugs can hijack the brain and overpower the brain biochemically and make it very difficult for a person to resist impulses and to stop that habit. Well, unfortunately, you're going to feel that with urges to want to take more of the drug. The other important health issue to consider is the potential for early exposure to alcohol on learning. There are some interesting studies that suggest early exposure to alcohol can do significant damage to a part of the brain that's associated with memory. It's called the hippocampus. Damage to the hippocampus is going to impact learning. To some degree, you could consider the brain still on training wheels. It's not yet at its maximal maturity. It's not yet able to perform at optimal levels. Keep in mind that while you have standards and expectations for your youngster, you've got to make sure that's well aligned and matching their brain development. You have a fully mature prefrontal cortex. Sorting through all the noise and keeping a cool head is going to be, in the long run, the best policy as you develop a strong relationship with your child.
Just as the video showed, because of all the changes in the neural maturation of the adolescent brain and the behavioral characteristics marked by this time, such as thrill-seeking, impulsivity, trying to fit in with their peers, and understanding who they are and what they will become, this period puts teens at a higher risk of developing addictions, anxiety disorders, depression, and bipolar disorders at a much faster rate than any time in human development. It is estimated that by the age of 6, anxiety disorders begin. By age 11, behavioral disorders, mood disorders by age 13, substance abuse and suicidal ideation by the age of 15. And just as we learned according to Erik Erikson's 5th stage of development, teens need to develop a positive self-identity. They need to have positive interactions and experiences during this stage in their development, or they will enter into adulthood without integrating their sense of identity, without having a strong sense of who they are. And as Erikson states, this leads to crises such as mental health and disorders or illnesses. That's why treatment during adolescence years is crucial. You know, we have to keep in mind that today's youth is our future, so access to quality and consistent mental health care, as many positive experiences and interactions that teens can have will impact their future development. Hopefully also by having access to good care, the patterns of mental illness that have a tendency to affect generations, whether the causes be environmental or heredity or a combination of both, can hopefully be broken. Teens, although they're at a greater risk for developing mental disorder, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, and geographical locations, I found all put a disproportionate percentage of teens at a higher risk for developing mental illness. Hopefully all of you remember the video we watched on the brain area video and the ecological theory, where each level of a society, the microsystem, the mesosystem, exosystem, and macrosystem, are all independent of each other, and each level affects a child's development. Communities that are plagued with higher levels of stress, poor nutrition, lack of quality support services, and communities that have higher crime rates and where drugs are more accessible are all contributing factors to the disparities found in mental illness and the effect and the lack of effect that access to care can have. Many minority teens don't seek mental health treatment because the stigma of having a mental health disorder goes against their family or cultural beliefs. Many minorities who are at a low socioeconomic status are immigrants, which brings a language barrier into as a problem, where there's poor communication with the counselor, so it's difficult. And many minorities do not understand how to access healthcare services, and many distrust practitioners due to misdiagnoses. The CDC found that Black youth usually do not seek care because 25% of the time Black youth are diagnosed with schizophrenia when in actuality it's an affective disorder, and more Latinos are diagnosed with affective disorders than whites. Contributing factors to misdiagnosis is that most healthcare providers are not trained to be sensitive or knowledgeable about cultural differences. I also found that minorities in rural communities are 2 times more likely to commit suicide than adolescents found in the city due to isolation in smaller towns and access to any form of mental health care whatsoever. The Department of Health and Human Services reports that 55% of rural communities, and I found this quite shocking, in the United States do not have a single psychologist, psychiatrist, or a social worker. According to the National Coalition of Homeless, there's an estimated 1.3 million teens who are homeless, and because of sexual abuse, physical abuse, or parental abuse, they are 3 times more likely to have a mental disorder. As always, teens in foster care are also at a higher risk due to lack of consistency of attachment bonds growing up, and also the fact that they are relocated so many times that continuity to care is a major prevention in their mental health. Adolescent minorities are also incarcerated at a higher rate than non-minorities and usually are not evaluated for a mental disorder. It's found that approximately 75% of youth in the juvenile justice system have one mental health condition, and at least 20% have a core morbidity diagnosis. In doing my research, I came across a very interesting study done by the University of Michigan, and it's called the National Voices Project. And this project brought awareness to the many disparities that minority children face. They actually did a 5-year study that included 2,000 mental health professionals across the United States. And as you can see by the following chart, what they found is that although over the past 2 years, accessibility to care has increased, but there's still a significant disparity or gap in access for teens in communities where there's a perception of racial or ethnic inequality. My next question was, why are there so many disparities in treating minorities? To answer this question, I found it helped to understand some of the differences in health insurance policies and governmental policies. Access to insurance plays a crucial role in closing the gap between teens who receive care and those who don't. The Affordable Care Act has made some improvements in making mental and behavioral health care more effective, such as children being able to stay on their parents' health insurance past the age of 21. They're actually don't have to find new insurance until the age of 26, and people cannot be turned away due to pre-existing conditions. One crucial exclusion to the Affordable Care Act was that treatment of children with schizophrenia, depression, and bipolar disorders are excluded. In an effort to make healthcare more accessible, the federal government did decide to raise the federal poverty level, which is actually $23,850 for a family of 4, to a rate that is 138 times above the national poverty level. However, this made Medicaid more accessible to millions of low socioeconomic people, but this also excluded families right above the poverty level, which leaves 2 million adolescents aged 12 to 17 years without any insurance. There are basically 3 major different types of categories when it comes to insurance care. One is Medicaid and Medicaid managed care. There are a combination of federal and state programs that offer insurance for people who actually don't meet the federal poverty line. Due to changes in the Affordable Care Act, more people are insured, but the downside to this is that there's not enough providers who will accept Medicaid reimbursements because they are so low. Medicaid managed care only offers 6 to 10 visits per year, and usually what happens is after 10 visits, a practitioner is required to fill out a treatment plan. Treatment plan is usually reviewed by someone who's not a mental health professional, and usually a denial in care is any slight improvement on the teen's progress renders the care not accessible anymore. Also, Medicaid is forced to focus on younger children, making teens again a low health priority. And here's a short video on all managed care.
You're fighting for survival, and you don't have the energy to fight with your insurance company.
A few years ago, while working towards a PhD in college, this woman was attacked and raped by another student. She asked not to be identified by name.
So I didn't talk about it for a really long time. It was getting to the point that I wasn't really functioning. I suffered severe depression during that period of time, suicidal thoughts, and it was really hard for me to get through every day.
Her work suffered. Faced with losing her scholarship, she sought professional help.
It was very clear that this was a person that would be able to do well, but that would need a lot of help over an extended period of time.
Her health insurance company was Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. Like many big insurers, it subcontracted mental health benefits to a company called Magellan. Magellan came into existence to help insurers battle rising costs. It's one of the largest managed care companies that specializes in mental health. Now, Magellan is facing criticism from patients and doctors who say that care is being sacrificed in the name of cost containment. In this case, Magellan authorized a few sessions at a time, which delayed some treatment. Then, after about a year, Magellan just started saying no.
They are denying my claims without explanation. It seems that they don't want me to continue being treated, so they're giving me a really hard time.
My sense is that these patients are being traumatized by the insurance companies. It's sort of trauma over trauma.
Lois Gorwitz is a psychologist who worked for Magellan from 2000 to 2002. She was a senior care manager, which means that she was the one who decided which claims would be paid. Gorwitz says there is a business incentive to deny care.
Managed care companies, it's their job to limit costs. If they don't limit costs, the insurance companies are not going to pay them huge amounts of money.
Gorwitz says she was uncomfortable with what her bosses expected her to do, and she quit after 2 years.
The next kind of insurance that I wanted to speak about was the State Children's Health Insurance Program, which is an expansion on Medicaid benefits. It was actually designed for children and adolescents who do not come from families that meet poverty guidelines, so they don't qualify for Medicaid, but they also can't afford private insurance. The downside is that in 2012, the Supreme Court ruled, as you can see by this map, that states actually have the right to determine if they want to expand their Medicaid benefits. 22 states have chosen not to implement the expansion of Medicaid benefits, and this leaves millions without health insurance coverage. For example, 1.6 million blacks have no health coverage, 1.3 million Latinos, and 1.5 million under the age of 25. So again, millions of teens have to go without any form of health insurance, including primary care practitioner, which could be the first line of defense in recognizing a mental health disorder. The next type of insurance would be private insurance, which is usually the best. However, people with jobs that are low socioeconomic status don't have access to this care, and it can be very costly, and the deductibles can be very high. Preventions that I found while doing my research. As social workers, we need to advocate more for teen mental health. We need to make sure that we're reaching teens who are marginalized, supporting their families through case program studies. Also, school-based programs are always a good option to go, but unfortunately, they're also being weighed down with the weight of children who qualify now for SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. For example, in my school district, in 2006, only 10% of the student population required for SNAP, was required SNAP, and in 2010 that rose to 24%, and they expect a 10 to 15% increase this year, so schools are forced to weigh the balance between providing good nutrition or hiring more counselors to meet the demands of these children. What I also found was that there's a lot of innovative ways to help teens, especially teens in rural areas. Many times people are combining mental health care and community resources centers, so teens can remain ambiguous as far as walking in and actually receiving care. They're associated with primary care physician settings, so no one has an idea of what you're doing in there, and the stigma of having a mental illness will hopefully motivate more teens to seek help. A lot of teens are tied to social media, so there's many cell phone applications that allow teens to share stories with other teens, and also self-motivational short videos. What also interests me was that video conference is a new way of accessing more people, especially teens in rural areas and maybe urban settings where, again, the stigma of actually entering a mental health practitioner's office will decrease. One thing that I thought was very interesting when it came to preventions was that most pediatric programs, out of 213 in the United States, only 25 provide programs in adolescent health. So hopefully more pediatric internships will produce more trained professionals in primary care practitioners and specifically in mental health disorders and illness of teens. Here's just a couple quotes that I thought that really resonated with me about how important our children are and how vulnerable they can be. That's the end of my presentation. I want to thank you for watching. I hope that you learned something beneficial, that it was not only interesting but informative. Thanks for watching.